Good evening, everybody. Thank you, Nico. My unpaid intern, Nico, is up there. I am so happy to see so many people interested in urban design. It's pretty exciting. So I'm just here to give a little bit of background and then introduce the real stars of the show. But I'm Jess Anderson. I'm the mayor of Chapel Hill. In terms of background, in 2021, UNC and the town of Chapel Hill announced the Carolina Economic Development Strategy. And it's a new partnership to revitalize downtown and to make it even better than it already is, as we've been saying over and over again, and further economic development in Chapel Hill by retaining and attracting more innovation-oriented businesses, talent, and full-time residents to downtown. And we actually have a lot of full-time residents here from 140 West. Thanks for popping over, friends. The following year, our council approved ARPA funds to help implement this work through a two-part streetscape enhancement and mobility plan. We believe that downtown is the heart of this community, and we want it to work for all users. Downtown business owners, workers, shoppers and diners, residents, students, but also kids and families, teenagers, seniors, and people with limited vision, mobility or English proficiency, and our neighbors in need. The focus of this project is to create a vision and design for our downtown streets and public rights-of-way that achieves economic vitality, improves the pedestrian experience, and creates safety accessibility for everyone who comes downtown. For those who did not pay attention to the election in November, congratulations. Also, my mayoral platform centered on the tenets of complete community. And this is a plan for a more sustainable and equitable future for Chapel Hill. One of the four cornerstones of this platform is to continue the town's progress and momentum towards creating a more economically resilient downtown. We've done a great job at adding office space and lab space to keep homegrown talent here and attract outside companies. But we know we need to do more. Indeed, all the communities sharing with us tonight were once in our shoes, recognizing the need to invest in their downtowns to secure long-term relevancy. They've moved from a vision through construction and are now reaping the benefits of their Great Streets projects. I'm excited to hear their stories, learn from their experiences, and understand the impacts to their respective communities. In terms of introductions, this is a multi-stage endeavor with many stakeholders. We've contracted with a nationally acclaimed consultant group out of Raleigh called Tool Design. We've only met them on Zoom up until today, so that's also exciting. And to lead this effort in concert with the town staff, ensuring all recommended improvements are safe, accessible, and sustainable. Please welcome Kevin Bacon, Director of Urban Design for Tool's Southeast Region and the lead project manager for this effort. And our MC for tonight needs no introduction. You'll see why. Scott Maitland, owner of Top of the Hill Restaurant and Brewery, is a longtime fixture and champion of downtown Chapel Hill. Scott is also serving on the advisory committee for this project, and so thank you so much to Scott for your continued service to our community. And I'll hand it over from there. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I was saying I wouldn't need a microphone, but what the heck, let's use it. I might break out in the karaoke though, that's a problem. Seriously, I am delighted to have been asked to MC this. I'm so excited about what's happening. I moved to Chapel Hill because I was invited to come and compete for a scholarship at the law school. And honestly, I'd already been accepted to Yale and I didn't think that I was going to come, but I thought, hey, it's a free trip. And I fell in love with this town immediately upon seeing its downtown. And I think it's the craziest darn thing, but it continues to be my passion. And I love this downtown, and I'm excited about what we're doing. And I'm also firmly in the camp that things are great. We're doing well. I'm up on that corner every day, been there for 28 years. and I have reason to believe that our best years are in front of us. So very excited to be here to help talk to some folks that can help shape that. And I'm very excited to, first of all, start introducing Ian Lockwood. He's a livable transportation engineer, and he's been doing this now for 37 years, so he must have started when you were about 5 or something, I think. He's collaborated on numerous Main Street designs and downtown revitalization, and he and I have a couple of things in common. We were both combat engineers, but he was for the Canadian Army, and I was for the United States Army, but here's where it gets really wacky. During COVID, fill some time, I claimed my Canadian citizenship, so hey, Ed, it's nice to have you. He has done a lot of things. He's going to draw upon his experiences in terms of overhauling Plant Street in a winter garden, Florida, as a way to kind of get this ball rolling.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. So I'm going to be talking about Plant Street, and it's in Winter Garden, which is in the center of Central Florida, about 70 miles from each coast. It became a center for the citrus industry before the car was invented. So in the 1800s, this whole strip through Florida was citrus, and the railway went right down the main street picking up oranges and taking them to different markets. There were all sorts of citrus businesses in Winter Garden, and also a very vibrant bass fishing industry going on. So they had hotels and prosperity. So the city was really riding high. They invented frozen orange juice there during World War II to ship it around the world. So lots of good things are happening there. But because of poor agricultural practices, pollution killed the fish in the lakes. And then there was these 3 frosts that came through and killed the citrus trees. And the farmers couldn't get any more insurance. And so the entire citrus industry moved out of town and went south. And so there was no economy left in the city. And the city just died. It became a ghost town. And there's even a book written about it called The Lost Decades, about how nothing was happening except disinvestment and people leaving the city. So that happened from the 80s to around 2000. So when we got to town, this is kind of what we saw, about 80% vacancies on the main shopping street. They paved over the rail track in hopes of creating some energy, but they lacked place, they lacked economy, there was nothing going on. So we had to think about how to turn this around. And we thought about, why do we even have cities? Why did we invent cities? And we invented cities to bring people together for social and economic exchange. Instead of being scattered all over the countryside, we come together to actually reduce transportation for exchange. And all the places in the city that should have the most exchange, it's near downtown. That should have a higher concentration of all the different mixes of uses and densities and so forth, so you get that really tight economic exchange without having to travel very far. And of all the places in your downtown that should be about exchange, it's your main street, of course. So that was the purpose, was to maximize exchange on the street. And so that's what we did. We designed it so that people could shop, eat, play, meet, have cultural exchange, and so forth. So when you're looking at a street for the first time, you're trying to figure out how to design it. You can design it like an engineer or an artist, two extremes. So as an engineer, you would break it down into its component parts, perfect each part, put it back together, but you'd probably end up with a bit of a Frankenstein street at the end of it. Or you could look at it like an artist and sort of take some broad strokes of your vision and slowly fill in the details and create something very beautiful, but it might not work. So the idea is you want all of these perspectives, but it really takes a village to build a city, and it takes all kinds of perspectives on your main street. You need to know people's values, the history of the place, what the businesses are thinking, what the residents are thinking, and you work together to establish a vision, and then it's just up to us to draw it and get it constructed. So there's some best practices. So one thing that we found on all of our Main Street projects is the 2 most important things you can have on your Main Street is wide sidewalks and street trees. Everything else is less important. So you can see these wide sidewalks with dining and bike parking and all kinds of stuff, and nice street trees for that sense of enclosure. The next thing is it needs to operate slowly. You want your street to operate slowly and safely and comfortably. So you can see we used brick for texture. sense of enclosure, things to look at, lateral shifts, and all these things work together to get the motors to drive slowly. And here, this, if you were to drive through here, you don't need any speed limit signs, you don't need enforcement. Folks drive between maybe 8 and 12 miles an hour on this street. Some of our other main streets maybe a little faster, but nice and slow. I want to point out just a little bit of a technical thing about valley gutters and bulb outs. I took this picture after it rained, and you can see the water is still in the gutter. That's the lowest part of the street. So the parking row actually slopes from the curb into the street, and then it comes up. And that's important because we want it to go down so this whole middle part gets lowered so the sidewalks pop. And I'll show this, I'll use this other street that we designed to illustrate it before and after. So the curbs here, that's the lowest part of the street, here and here. On this street, it's at the valley gutters. And so the street slopes down and then up. So the middle of the street is actually lower, and so it's so the sidewalks pop. And then if you notice here, the pickup truck's leaning into the buildings and the sidewalk, and same with the SUV. Here they're leaning away from the sidewalk, so it's way more comfortable. Very subtle, but it's important. It's a best practice. And then the bulb outs are important because we want to kind of daylight the intersection so people don't park too close. And this is a huge benefit for reducing serious and fatal crashes. And then the optical width of the street, I just put a black line here. When there's no parked cars, that's how wide the street feels. And even if there's no parked cars, it's much narrower. So again, that really helps to get drivers to behave themselves when they're on the street. Flush streets, most of our new main streets that we design have no vertical curves. And the idea is, there's your design vehicle right there. And so that guy can participate in celebrations and events just like anybody else. And then when you're setting up your event, this has flush streets all the way around it, you can set up your tents anywhere you want, so you have a lot of flexibility. Avoid turn lanes and traffic signals. Traffic signals create a lot of clutter. When someone sees a stale green light, they speed up. Stuff you don't want to happen on your main street. You want to go low tech with stop signs whenever you can. And turn lanes and extra lanes, they're about throughput. And your main street is about social and economic exchange. And if you give it an extra role like throughput or main bus route or something like that, it can't achieve its main street's functions as good as it should. Do those other things on other streets. About parking. In all the projects, everyone says, oh, on-street parking is so important, we need to maximize it. We can't do this or that because we need all the parking we can get. And that's just not true. We have reduced parking on several main streets, and afterwards they're much more prosperous, they're much better places, they attract more people. So don't get distracted by that sort of myth. The place is far more important than storing personal property in your most important space in your city. Engaging, ideally, you follow what we call the 8-second rule. As you're walking down the street, the facades change about every 8 seconds. It's sort of entertaining, you see new displays, and people will walk much further with a rhythm of buildings up to the street with appropriate levels of glazing and so forth on the ground floor. I just want to point out, since we're just out of the pandemic, during the pandemic, people couldn't congregate in the buildings, so they created these corrals. This picture was taken in the pandemic, here and over here, for outdoor dining. And it was hugely successful. So the pandemic's pretty well done, but the businesses want these dining areas. Now, if go back 5 years, they'd say, no, we need the parking. We absolutely need the parking. Now they don't want the parking because the street is way more successful with more space for people and things to do. So really, it's the sidewalk width that is really important. This was a great test of that idea. And then just the trail. We built about 22, 23 miles of trail initially, and did all these things. So it's about 100,000 people come by the trail every month. It represents about 25% of the sales, and it's healthy, and it was really catalytic for the downtown. But there's other things to do besides the trail. Just going with your grandchild, hanging out, playing at the splash pad, going to a beer festival, all these festivals going on. And here's a mom and her son just spending the morning downtown, having fun. We want it for a place to be a soft place where it's comfortable for people just to spend time. Here's a couple just riding down the street, chilling out, seeing what's going on. And this is actually a new building, and you want to use the right materials and the right design so it fits in, and they do all kinds of cool events there. And the value is spreading down the alleys, down the side streets. So it started in the main street, and it's spreading all through the downtown. And then people keep adding to the trail. And so soon it will go from the Atlantic Ocean to the Gulf of Mexico, and there's all these other trails. So it started an entire kind of culture, a trail culture throughout the whole area. I want to talk about maintenance for a second, using the idea of hard and soft space. This is a prison cell, it's hard space. This is a living room. It's soft, and if you're normal, you'll prefer to spend time in here and not there. But it's easier to maintain, by the way, the prison cell. So, and this is a classroom like when I was a kid. The chairs were bolted to the tables because it was easier for the janitor to mop the room. So it was designed to be cleaned easily. And this is a higher performing classroom today, but it's harder to clean. This is a hard space at McDonald's. The chairs are bolted to the ground. It's easy to clean, and it's designed to get you out. You don't want to spend any time here. This is a nice sit-down restaurant, and you'll spend all night there and have a great time and spend a lot more money. So here's a hard street. There's a mom pushing her baby. Here's another mom pushing her baby. Which mom is more comfortable? So she is going to spend a lot more time here, enjoy herself, spend more money, have a great experience. So when we talk about designing main streets, the public works fellow usually comes out and says, we can't do that because it's going to increase into maintenance. And of course, as you soften a street, as you use better materials, as you use brick and so forth, the maintenance costs are going to start to go up. And if you make it too soft, it will really go up because you'll be continually damaging your materials. However, there's a different value curve, and with a little bit of more maintenance, you can increase your softness and your welcoming environment really quickly. So if you hire the right landscape architect and engineer and so forth, who picks the right materials, they can soften the environment nicely. It will increase the cost a little bit, but the value curve goes up tremendously, and that's what you're after. So when the public works guy says you can't do that because of maintenance, you say, yeah, your maintenance costs go up, but the value to the town in terms of identity, placemaking, all these things will go up even more, and it's well worth it. So Plant Street is a place where people go to get their wedding pictures, their graduation pictures, lunch, coffee in the morning, a walk with their kid, walk the dog. It's a place just to go hang out. For all ages, it's a normal place just to go if you need to get a dress, whatever you want, you can usually find it somewhere on Plant Street. Interesting, it's become a huge part of the city's identity, even to the point that they made our little entry feature here into their city logo. So they really cherish this place now, and it's probably the most important place in the city. Thank you.
Gian, on a personal note, I was Ross Perot's campaign manager for the state of Florida in the '92 election. And some of my big worker folks were in Winter Garden, and I will tell you that it was dystopian in 1992. So you guys did a fantastic job. It really, it's really amazing to see. So, all right, next on the list we have John McCurdy. John is the Director of Community Development for Rogers, Arkansas. Is that right? Yep. In a position he's held for 7 years. He has had a strange career. This is him saying this. He has worked for Walmart. Rogers is home to Walmart, Tyson Foods, and J.B. Hunt. But he has been a professional viola player, a brand manager at Tyson Foods, a military training consultant, an Air Force colonel, the director of research at the Federal Lab System, the director for the Air Force Center for Character and Leadership Development. I think he knows some secrets about Area 51, but he's not letting me know. He's an avid cyclist, and he wants to see Dune 2 before it comes out in the theaters, but I checked on this, and it is the biggest hit of the year, so I think you're in good shape. Yeah.
I've seen one.
Thank you.
I don't have very many. I feel like I have inadequate slides. That was a really good presentation. I'd love for you to come by and speak to Rogers, because Rogers is behind Winter Park in our development. And I can tell you that there were things in that presentation that are absolutely spot on. Some lessons learned that we should have learned before. We have made some mistakes that we would have benefited for that presentation. For example, stoplights. We stacked a bunch of stoplights on a street diet, thinking that would be pedestrian friendly, and it kind of is pedestrian friendly, but it's also unnecessary. And it does clutter the street. I think it diminishes some of the aesthetic value of that street. But that was an absolutely outstanding presentation. There's a lot of good meat in there, and hopefully people were taking notes. I wanted to give you a little bit of geography. Has anybody been to Rogers? No, hey, there we go. Nobody has, a lot of people probably never heard of Rogers. Rogers is part of this area called Northwest Arkansas, which is becoming, it's getting to where you don't say I'm from Rogers, you say I'm from Northwest Arkansas. So the people in that area, within that metropolitan planning area, are starting to define themselves and identify as Northwest Arkansas instead of the town that they're from, except for Bentonville. Bentonville's decided that it's okay to be from Bentonville. But here's where it is. It's in the northwest corner of the state of Arkansas. Here's Arkansas. It's to the west generally of where we are right now. And then within the northwest Arkansas area, you can see Bentonville, Rogers, Springdale, and Fayetteville. Fayetteville's where the University of Arkansas is. I wouldn't be here, nobody would care if they do about Northwest Arkansas, except for the fact that one day back in the 60s, Sam Walton's driving through and he ran out of gas and built his first Walmart in Rogers. And because of that, Northwest Arkansas is on the map. I think that Sam Walton being there created kind of this competition between Johnny Hunt of JB Hunt Trucking and Don Tyson of Tyson Foods. And so everybody was trying to see how much money they could make. And so those three big gorillas dominate the economy in Northwest Arkansas. I can go to Walmart and say I'm shopping locally. I'm sorry to the rest of the country what Walmart has done. And I guess if there's any good news that the third generation of Waltons, I think, is trying to make up for it a little bit. We are awash of billionaires. We have billionaires running around the streets in Northwest Arkansas who never even met Sam Walton, and unless something changes, neither, their great grandchildren will still be billionaires. I don't know how that's sustainable for a long time, but for now, we have a bunch of third generation and second generation Waltons who are doing really, really great things in Northwest Arkansas. They're building museums and they're investing in public infrastructure. They're doing natural stream bank preservation work and building bike trails and doing just really nice things. And so that has been hugely beneficial. About 10 years ago, Walmart Corporation was thinking about moving its headquarters for IT and more of the high-tech stuff to the West Coast. And we're thinking maybe we'll kind of disperse our headquarters functions around the country a little bit, but they made the strategic decision not to do that and to demand that if you're doing business with Walmart, you have to have an office in Northwest Arkansas. And so because of that, the Fortune whatever, 100 and plus, if you're in the consumer packaged goods business, you have an office in Northwest Arkansas. Well, a lot of those folks liked it just fine living in Florida, and they didn't want to go to Bentonville or Rogers, Arkansas, but after they get there, a lot of them fall in love with it. I mean, it's very, very much like right here. I mean, this feels very homely to me to be in Chapel Hill. And so it's a nice place. And so we also have this opportunity, as the mayor was speaking about your economic goals, we have an opportunity to create an entrepreneurial culture in Northwest Arkansas, because eventually Walmart's going out of business. If history serves to tell us anything, nothing lasts forever in the business world. And so we hope to have a very diverse economy at some point. So we're investing a lot in public infrastructure and in placemaking. And so that's really the story on Rogers. This is our future land use map, and it's only up here to show that we've got really the historic downtown Rogers, and then we have more of we call it Uptown Rogers, but That's where our high rises are. That's where, you know, most of the very wealthy people live, and the expensive country club and all that kind of stuff. So it's really two very different cities. There's this authentic downtown and this very rapidly developing uptown. A couple of years ago, we had more Class A office space and construction in Rogers, Arkansas than Kansas City, Oklahoma City, Tulsa, almost as much as Dallas. And so very, very rapidly growing area, the fastest growing part of the country, under 1 million, you know, population, and it'll be 1 million like within the next several years. This was our downtown area when I started 7 years ago, and I'm going to talk about before I got there. I don't mean it that way. There was a lot of momentum building, and I just kind of tapped into some existing plans and have built on it a little bit. But before I came to town, this is what it looked like. So a lot of parking, you know, a lot of flat parking. We have a railroad running right through the town. We grew up around the apple industry instead of citrus industry, but a very similar kind of background to the city. And we had a bike park that the Walton Family Foundation had paid for, but it was extremely hard to maintain. We really didn't have any much of a reason to come to downtown Rogers. This is on a Saturday during our farmers market, and you can see a handful of people at the farmers market. This is a pretty busy day on a weekend in downtown Rogers, like 6 years ago, 5 years ago, something like that. More of the same. See the folks at the farmers market. Here's, you know, kind of basically our streetscape. I'm sorry, I've been on the road for like a week, and my staff kind of threw some pictures together for me today. But then we started thinking about, you know, how can we use our downtown area to draw people together and to make it that place of exchange? You know, people talk about their downtown as being the heart of the city. And you've got to invest in your downtown, but you also have to make your downtown accessible. So for us, a lot of that meant making it easy to get from the Walmart general headquarters to downtown Rogers. How does it interact with the surrounding communities? And a big piece of that is bicycle connectivity. I'm on a hotel right over here, and it seems like there's a Greenway Trail behind the hotel. I'm not sure where the trail goes, but we have a similar situation where we have several hundred miles of Greenway Trail and bicycle trail throughout Northwest Arkansas. We're completing that into Missouri and down into Central Arkansas. But making downtown Rogers kind of a hub of where those trails come together, where transit comes together, where the rail line meets into all of that. And so this leads to street projects and connectivity. This is the downtown area down here, and this is a project to connect downtown with roundabouts to Walmart headquarters. Roundabouts not being a downtown appropriate street thing, but very good for moving cars efficiently and safely from here to there. I just got back from Carmel, Indiana, if anybody's ever been there, but I mean, it's a joy to drive around in Carmel, Indiana. This is more of the connectivity. This is our downtown area, and then how we connect to the Ozark Mountains out to the east, and then the Walmart headquarters to the northwest, and then Fayetteville and the other Northwest Arkansas cities to the south.
How far is the Walmart headquarters?
Right, it's very, very close. It's about less than a quarter of a mile from the city limits. So Walmart headquarters is currently in downtown Bentonville, but they decided to move it to I-49, which makes it easier to get to Walmart headquarters from downtown Rogers than from downtown Bentonville. If you were to purchase a 1,500 square foot townhome in downtown Bentonville today, you're probably looking at about $1.2 million. You can buy 1,500 square feet in Rogers for $275,000. So, you know, I think that we've got a competitive advantage for most people to choose to live in downtown Rogers. And I say this as not just as trivia, but I think thinking really holistically about the economics, the maintenance tail on these things. How are you structuring your overall street system, your bike system, to make your downtown a magnet, to make it a good place that people want to spend time in? You have to think about all these things. A huge public space, Lake Atlanta Park and the Rail Yard Bike Park to the east. And then this is kind of that area where that farmer's market was. not sure what all this is saying. There's our bike park. So kind of the first big thing that we took on was the bike park. We paved it. It was open maybe 20 or 30 days a year before we did this. Now it's open. People are out there on rainy days. It's been incredible to see, even in the middle of the winter, when it's super cold in most of the country, I'll drive to the bike park and look at the license plates. There'll be maybe 15 different states represented. It's Wisconsin and Minnesota and Colorado. People are driving from Colorado and Oregon and North Dakota to go to Rogers, Arkansas to ride mountain bikes on our bike park because it's paved, it's open all the time. We hired one of the very best design companies in the world to come in and design this thing. And so there's a lot of complex design and physics involved with building this kind of a facility. And I'll just maybe brown nose a little bit on Tool. Congratulations on getting Tool, because there are very, very few firms in the world that really know how to do this stuff right. And it's so important to be super careful when you select your consultants and design professionals. So we go after the very, very best people that we can get. Somebody told me that they're willing to cut costs in just about any area but design. You've got to have good, solid design. This is what we replaced the parking lot with. If you can do one thing, put in trees. We have trees. I'm not at all satisfied with our trees. I wanted big giant trees, and I just couldn't find big giant trees that would work for us. Hopefully someday these little things will grow up and be impressive. But it's designed to be kind of a tunnel of trees. It's an alley. It's hard to see, but we've got railroad tracks on either side with tables that are on wheels that you can move up and down the tracks to keep them locked because somebody would die. You know, some kid's going to ram it into some other kid, and so they are potentially very dangerous, but we can move them around and have community meals. We can restructure for the farmer's market on the weekend. We can have events out here. We put our Christmas tree in the middle of this big wooden circle right here. This is the bike trail. And so from this spot on our bike trail, you can go about 30 miles to the north and about 60 miles to the south and cover all of northwest Arkansas. And on the weekends, we'll get a lot of bike traffic through here. After we built this park, Onyx Coffee Lab got into this building and set up their headquarters. Anybody heard of Onyx? There you go. One caffeine addict in the room, I guess. But Onyx is maybe the top roaster in the world. They frequently win international coffee roasting competitions, and this park attracted Onyx to come to downtown Rogers and establish their headquarters. So immediate benefits of this type of investment in drawing in the types of businesses and firms that you need to create a sense of place to create synergy. This is just a look down the trail. The trees aren't that bad, but you know, it's hot, man. I don't know how hot it gets here, but it gets so hot in the summer, and you really need that shade. We use a lot of LID design, and so you know, we think a lot about where the stormwater is going to go and how we're going to manage all that. We don't want a whole lot of hardscape gutters and subterranean stormwater infrastructure if we can avoid it. This is kind of my, I wish I didn't have all these traffic signals thing, but here you can see, that's one of my staff members out posing for a photo. But this street used to be, it's an old street. This was the bad side of the tracks when I was growing up. And so it was just kind of a gnarly street. It had never been used. And so we did a street diet, took it down to 10-foot travel lanes. We don't have a center stripe because that helps people to slow down a little bit. We have raised crosswalks as pedestrian primary, and it made a lot of people mad, you know, because they're used to driving their dualies and their boats through here as fast as they want to go. But we want to make money in downtown Rogers because I don't know how it is in North Carolina, but in Arkansas, municipalities are about 90% funded with sales tax. And so we're really, really concerned about sustaining business and commerce in our downtown. This was part of the park project. It's a public stage area. We feel that, and we have evidence to show that programming is the key to this. Now on a typical weekend night, we're doing live music that's free every Friday and Saturday night at this stage. And we have about 3,000 people hanging out in downtown Rogers over the weekend. On our biggest day, during Frisco Festival, which was kind of the big annual thing in downtown Rogers, you might get 800 people. And so now every weekend is bigger than our biggest event was before these improvements. There you go. It's fun. We put out a call, international call for artists to provide art for the park. And so we've got a French artist, a London artist, and then also a local artist for these 3 water towers. They'll rotate through from time to time. You can kind of get an idea here of the streetscape. We've got a place for kids to play. These are water fountains, and they spray letters and things, you know, patterns. And at night, there's fog and lights, and it's just packed all the time. Get a little bit of a feel for this is another park off to the side. We've got a developing alleyway that's similar to what we saw in Florida, where all of this design is starting to spill out into the surrounding area. This is a new business. That's the inside of Onyx Coffee Lab. And then, you know, just new businesses to show that in addition to restaurants and retail and coffee and things like that, we've got about 600 new units of multifamily development. Mixed use is allowed by right. We instituted a form-based code in our downtown, uptown areas, and we're in the midst of working with DPZ to adopt a mostly form-based code throughout the city to encourage more mixed use. So that's an orientation to Rogers, Arkansas.
Okay, I'm convinced. I'm not sure where I'm going, but might be leaving Chapel Hill, everybody. Take over. Seriously. All right, so next is going to be Allison Justice. Allison is the communications manager for the city of Hendersonville. I get this. I decided I just had to read this because I cannot possibly remember. And I want to quiz you. She is the spokesperson or the communication and engagement officer for police, fire, public works, engineering, community development, finance, water and sewer, and administration departments. Holy smokes. Keeping you busy. She is a graduate of Elon University, and Allison joined the Hendersonville team in 2018 after serving 3 years as the spokesperson for the Henderson County Sheriff's Office. And I was telling her that my family was on the way to Brevard, I guess maybe a year ago, and we just unintentionally stopped in Hendersonville, and what a treat it was. It was really a nice town to be in. So here you go.
Thank you so much. So Hendersonville is nestled between Asheville, North Carolina, and Greenville, South Carolina. How many of you have visited Hendersonville before? Amazing. We hope you'll come back and join us again. But here's our lovely Main Street downtown. We're a population of around 16,000 people. And our town was blessed with a great foundation, but also some real visionaries on our city council over the years that really stayed the course. And when I speak about some great foundational aspects, in the late 1800s, when the land was donated for Hendersonville, one of the stipulations was that a carriage pulled by 4 horses needed to be able to turn around in the middle of Main Street. And speaking about those wide sidewalks and those wide access points, that was some great foundational elements that were there. Moving forward, this is a photo of the late 50s, and as you can see, it's moving into a more car-centric kind of setup here. Shortly after this, in the 60s, the interstate system was expanding, and people in Hendersonville were worried about how I-26 was going to affect downtown. They were noticing that businesses were starting to move out, our belts moved out and went to the shopping mall, and so we had some real innovators. This is not Hendersonville. This is Grand Junction, Colorado. And in the mid-60s, they got some notoriety of establishing a great way to bring people back downtown. So in 1975, a group of our council members visited Grand Junction, Colorado, brought a report back to the council members, and from there, they established a municipal service district. They petitioned the state to give us our street back, to take Main Street off the state highway system, and they started a streetscape project. And so you can see we're moving slowly, we're making it a place that is enjoyable for pedestrians. This is just a reminder that that innovation and that vision may be met with some controversy, may be met with some pushback. This was not a unanimous decision. Our city council leadership and our staff really had to push forward and see the vision and see the end game. And so this is just a great reminder that we're really reaping the benefits, but it wasn't always the most popular of opinions. But looking at this crowd, it looks like you have some great buy-in here, so it's really exciting to see. Here's our finished streetscape in the late 1970s, and we have that great serpentine design that's allowed for a lot of pedestrian amenities to be added. In the 2010s, we did a streetscape upgrade, new curb and gutter, the utilities were moved underground, complete water sewer rehab, decorative lights, we've got furniture on the streets, and this was done in 3 different phases across our Main Street district. And it really does create a nice park atmosphere. But that was a few years ago. Now we are focusing a little more on our 7th Avenue district. This is a short walk from Main Street, and historically it has been very important for our past, present, and our future. When the railroad came to town, this was our main commercial area. And we're doing the first of hopefully 3 phases. Parts 2 and 3 aren't funded yet, but we will get there. But we're doing a full water sewer rehab with infrastructure that is over 100 years old, with pedestrian amenities, and also improving the connection from our Main Street to our 7th Avenue, and that's just an artist rendering. And don't let this next slide scare you, because it scares me a little, but we are in the midst of this construction right now. So our 7th Avenue street is closed. We still have sidewalk access to these businesses. And the 2nd and 3rd phases that I mentioned move ahead with some greenway connections that will get you to our Ocklawaha Greenway, as well as connections to the Acosta Trail, which is linking us to Brevard. We're really excited about that. But if you see down here, we've got like some signage. One of the main things as communications manager we've been working to do is letting the public know that these businesses are still open, and working with those businesses and communicating with them. And so that's been a challenge and a great opportunity, and we have a wonderful downtown program manager. These are some photos from our kickoff event where we brought in the landscape architect and our contractor and had a ton of city staff. That way the business owners could put faces to the people that they were going to be interacting with. And we've maintained great communications and also built some buy-in with our downtown boards. Starting the farmers market was great in this district, and it's built some great momentum. That slowed down a little with COVID, and now we're in the midst of construction. One of the main things I would say is to be a good listener for staff, and I'm sure council members already do this, but listening to the business's concerns and getting creative with how you can help them maintain the great services they're providing during construction. So Hard Hat Pop-Up Market is just one of the things we developed to help people realize that businesses are still open, and bringing even more pedestrian traffic downtown in the midst of the construction, even if vehicles can't pass through on the street. But this is just a photo of our Garden Jubilee on Main Street, and we're looking forward to the 7th Avenue streetscape completion. That way we can begin hosting events like this in that part of our downtown. So, thank you.
Fantastic. Finally, our 4th panelist is Derek Dostler, right? Have I got that right? Yeah. Derek is an engineer with Jacobs, and through a long-standing contract with Athens Clarke County in Georgia, Derek has worked alongside Athens staff to manage their special local option sales tax program. And in this position, Derek has overseen the construction of several transportation projects throughout Athens. So, take it away.
Thank you. Great to be here. I'm probably going to be the guy that kind of scares everybody. All the good ideas and all the planning and all, but let's get down to construction. Sorry about my format. One of the things I want to do with this slide is just really kind of commit to the fact that it's expensive. And the local people need to understand the fact, and your politicians and the residents and the taxpayers of the area, it's expensive. We did a little over 2 years worth of work. That's after design, which we took about 2.5 years to do. About 1,200 linear feet of Clayton Street, which we converted from a 3-lane traffic down to a 2-lane to widen our sidewalks and correct our on-street parking. and then a couple of side streets and a couple of intersections. So, we had about a $13.6 million project, and we spent 9, and we spent all of it, but you can see 9 of it's construction, and we did not go very far for the linear foot. And that's just all the things that people need to understand, from underground utilities, just the minutia of what is you don't see, and if the lay people, and I don't say that if you don't do this every day, is what I'm trying to say. If you're not doing it every day, you just don't understand the expense and what the unforeseen things can bring you. Just talking about funding, in Georgia, the Georgia law allows us to have a special purpose local option sales tax and a transportation tax. That's basically the voters could vote in a 1% tax for special projects. That's what that really means. The top one you can do parks, courthouses, all those kind of things, and the transportation is strictly for transportation projects. One of the things I want you, as y'all are designing this thing, to me it was important when we got into construction is can you answer that big question, is why? What are you doing? A lot of people don't understand that. And today, when you begin construction, whenever you begin it, they're not going to be here at this meeting. They're going to forget about it. So those people that you run into on the street, they're going to want to need to know why. Those businesses that have just moved in, why? And so you can come up with all the fancy stuff of what you have to do and why you need to do it. But to me, the biggest thing was, this was me, that I had an interesting conversation on the street, and a grandmother had her young kids with her, and she just said, I don't understand why you're messing everything up. I like it the way it is. And so that's what I settled on. It was like, let us prepare it for your grandchildren. So you've got to come up with, and I say come up with, develop that sense of why. Ooh. I'm the engineer in the group. And I'm going to talk a little bit about before construction and during construction. One of the things to do is you need to find out who that person is that's going to articulate what's going on in the community. You cannot have multitude of people telling people different stories, or you will lose the job and you're going to lose the credibility of the project. Go personally meet with everybody. I can't say that enough. Go meet with everybody that's going to be affected on that street. Now, while you're in the design, and before you start construction, and during your construction. During your construction, I would highly recommend you hire a project ambassador. That's our terminology. Develop your own terminology. The project ambassador was a former DOT employee. It didn't hurt that he was about 6'7" and about 300 pounds, so he didn't get a lot of flack. But he understood construction, and he understood public policy. So it was imperative to have that conversation with him. He wasn't in charge of the construction. He wasn't in charge of the design. He was, and I use the term buffer, not as in to keep people away, but somebody that can coordinate, develop, go tell them about schedules, what's happening. Oh, we found an unknown utility that we have to resolve that conflict. Somebody that's walking that street every day, talking to those people in front of those businesses. This is what's coming next week. This is 2 weeks from now. You're fine. What can we do for you? Oh, we're having our annual sidewalk sale. We're not going to be able to do that this year. Well, when is it? And then he can bring that information back to us and we can make adjustments. One of the other big things that you need to understand is things that you can't control. I say non-controlled utilities. That's not your public works department. That's the power company, that's the gas company, that's all these other entities that you don't know that have a whole host of other things that are going on. You can't control them. Sometimes it takes political clout to get there. As a layperson, sometimes you don't understand, and I say understand, you don't realize the city may be dealing with something on the other side of town. So there's a lot of stuff that's going on in the world of government that you'll never know, but the uncontrolled utilities teams, when they're going to be responsive, how they're going to be responsive. We stuck a shovel in the ground and COVID hit. And you're talking about death threats from folks that are like, understand why I didn't have people working. Well, one of the biggest things we had to do was relocate some power company vaults. The power company took the position that we are needed in case of emergency. We are not going to put people on the street to interact with a project that doesn't have to be done today. So you're talking about 6 months of an empty street with nobody on it, and then the politics of nobody understanding why no one was working. That was our first step. We had to get the utilities, the power company utility out of the way, and then here I am, front and center, and you just can't explain that to people. One of the other things, everything that's underground is underground for a reason, but you can't see it. That's the problem. I don't care what type of technology you think you have, ground penetrating radar, as-built, somebody, you need to know exactly what's going on. And what I call the pre-dig utilities and document is after we came up with our design, we talked about stormwater, we talked about things that have to go, things that you know that have to run on a slope, sewer, storm drain. We had the city road department take the designs that we had, based on the best information that we had, and we dug those trenches. We ended up on that small section of street, we found about 70 different conflicts. Some of it was old stuff, old water lines that were just abandoned, power lines that were there that nobody knew, gas lines that were there that nobody knew. And what that saved us was when we got into construction and actually putting that pipe in the ground, we had the benefit of knowing what was there, where it was, and we could design around it or make those changes early on, so when we got the construction crew there, all those things were taken care of. If you got into the construction and all of a sudden we had a conflict, you're just dead in the water. So you don't know exactly how to back up, how to get the design team back in, how to move around it. So that's something that, it costs money, it takes time, but I think it's really worth it in a downtown area, especially where you can't control. We didn't have the ability, politically, we didn't have the ability or the wherewithal. Our elected officials did not want to shut the street down. I would highly recommend it, but we had to work around it. In construction, I'm going to say it, your plan will fail. There's no way around that. It will fail. How it fails is a different conversation. So what you want to do is just minimize those things. And so don't be surprised at anything. This is key. Have your elected officials, your town leadership, they need to be on board ready to respond to those things. It cannot be we need a decision today, and then, our town meeting's a month away, and we'll make a decision there. You've got to be on board and get everybody going. Have your department people, those decision makers, ready to go. What I mean by that is, we have a problem, we need somebody to come out and look at it, and they send a junior worker out there. They were just sent to get a report and then leave to go back. You've got to have decision makers that are ready to move. Mock up. If there's something that's unusual, mock it up. Have a construction team build it. Put it out there. I've got a picture one I'll show you in just a minute. During construction, have your construction team, whether you have to provide it or put it in your contract, give them a mandate that they have to be within walking distance of the project. Because if they have a job trailer that's 6 miles away, that takes time for them to get there and get back. Have your yard closed. Nothing's worse than working in front of someone's business and say, we're waiting on materials. They will document every minute that you're not working. This is Clayton Street. This is our project. This is our historic downtown area. Athens, Georgia is a town and gown, the University of Georgia. You can see one of the things I wanted to show is just how much space it takes to work. Lay people don't understand that. So be able to articulate that, be able to expand on that, expand. And when I mean expand, we had 3 lanes of traffic, 2 sides of parking. You can see 1 car in the middle. It just takes a lot of room to put a heavy equipment and do things. Access points. Just make sure that your access points. If that business can't be open, the town mayor, town manager, whoever is an elected official, they're going to get the phone call. Make sure that your business can stay open and share with them how you're going to keep them open. Prepare for ancillary items. One of the things that we changed in Athens or in Georgia is every signal, if you have to put signals in, every signal has to have its own meter. So those are elements of surprise that we didn't know we needed. This is what I'm talking about mock-up. Athens, unfortunately, has no alleys. It was built back-to-back, long block buildings that go all the way through. There are no alleys. And what this is this is our solid waste. This is their opportunity to have businesses come bring the trash out. And they send small trucks to pick them up. So unsightly, what can we do to hide it? We developed an idea to build a metal shed around it. And people were like, man, that's not too bad. But when we started realizing the size, the sheer size of this thing, and this happens to be on a plain wall. Now think about it being in front of somebody's business. What that sheer size is going to be. Spend a little time, spend a little money, understand it, build it to scale, mock it up. If you do not understand what's on that construction drawing or an idea, mock it up and get an idea of what it really means. Just a couple things to prepare yourself for: damage and theft. That was a healthy tree, was it? That's one root ball of the tree that we dug up. So that's the things that are hiding underground. And I personally watched this come out of the ground, and it took several excavators to get it out over half a day. Quickly trying to wrap up, scheduling. Create scheduling for everything that you do. Be able to share it with your public. Make sure you understand what's going on. Different blocks of streets. You can cut it and slice it and dice it in different ways. Whatever your team feels is appropriate, whatever helps get the knowledge out, you've got to be able to share that schedule. Again, that project ambassador, he's walking around. And if something goes wrong, he can tell them when it'll be moved out to. Status updates. We did a monthly update to our county manager, and for his quick viewing, anything that was updated was in a different color. So he didn't have to read through, he could quickly see it. Updates, keep everybody updated. This is our finished product. We went from 3 lanes to 2. We properly put in parking, which was haphazardly at best. We widened the sidewalks, things that you need to take note of, the street lights. We decided to put in our own street lights, one for safety, one for accountability. We can control things better than the power company. You see the string lights. What we have typically done in Athens is you see the large trees that we would typically have. We have Christmas lights in them, and at Christmas it's really nice, it's really pretty, it's sparkly, everybody comes and takes pictures. But we wanted to do something that would take up some space until these other trees finally had a chance to grow. And these were originally designed to do the crisscross design. But right before we started construction, our fire department came in and said, fire code has changed. We can't pick up a ladder truck anymore. You're not going to be allowed to do it, or we're going to come down basically the first day. So you have to just make adaptations. Final thoughts. Empower your team, whoever your team is, the design team, the people on the ground, empower them. And define the expectations, because one of the worst things is undefined or unrealized expectations. And these two are mine. The call you don't want to make today, or the one that you don't want to make right now, is the one you need to make. And what I mean by that is we've all done it, oh man, I just got bad news, I don't want to tell nobody. You're trying to work up the courage. We all, or at least I do, you manifest that much larger in your own head. It's going to be worse than it really is. Everybody's trying to accomplish the same job. So make the phone call. Whatever it is, who your boss is, let them know. And the only thing worse than bad news is bad news late. That's the other part. Just let me know. If there's something bad, let me know. And then as you go through all this, celebrate your wins, even the little ones. If you get one block done, if you get one side of the street done, if you make a decision on design, celebrate it. Let everybody know that you're moving the progress forward. Don't just say, oh, we'll cut the ribbon at the end of the job. Because people want to see progress, and the only way to do progress is just celebrate the wins when you can. Thank you.
Thank you, up there. In terms of celebrating the wins, I think that's something that we are good at when it comes to basketball, but I'm not so sure we're good at it when it comes to other aspects of our community. And so, for example, I just want to say how grateful I am. I feel like my partner, Guy Murphy, was instrumental in convincing Starbucks to move across the street. And regardless of how you feel about Starbucks, how awesome it's going to be to have that in that space, right? And then my understanding, Canes is going to expand. So you know, everyone says, hey, nothing happens on Franklin Street. Well, no, actually things happen. It just takes a long time. So my new office is at 301 Columbia Street, which is where the construction is going on right on Columbia Street. And so I suspect there's probably 75 feet of issue going on here. And every day I got to drive through that to get into my office. 15 unidentified buried things in 75 feet that included us as the occupants of 301 standing on our doorstep flicking on lights for these guys to see if they were cutting off our electricity or turning on water to see if it was our water pipe, right? And it wasn't. That was the scary thing. It was like, well, what is this, right? So the point is that I'm seeing firsthand some of these issues that we run into. So we are running just a couple minutes behind, but what we thought we would do is we would have some questions and answers, and we also have some folks from Tool that will be taking questions from the audience too, but I will go ahead and kick things off here.
Sorry, just one moment.
Yep.
I just want to clarify that we have clipboards with paper, so if you have a question, we will pass the clipboards around, you can write your question, and then we'll take that and try to mix it into the questions that we already have.
And if for some reason we are unable to get to your question today, be rest assured that we are going to compile all those questions, and we're going to be having a team that's looking at all of that, incorporating all of that, and we will get that feedback to you. But okay, kicking things off for Ian, starting off with design. So Chapel Hill is not only a college town, but the university does have a big impact on town operations, and especially downtown. What are the most important considerations in making sure streets are flexible and contribute to the success of downtown all year long? Actually, here we go. This is the kind of amazing technology we have here. I think it'll start in 3 seconds.
Hello? Okay. So most of the main streets that we do in our downtown revitalization work happens in cities that don't have universities. And so what you want to do is design your downtown to be flexible. And what I mean by that, in terms of land uses themselves, the services they provide, and the way you can use it. The flexibility of the street, how you can use it over the course of a day. If it's hardwired for just one way of operating, you're going to be very limited. You want your street design to be super flexible. That's why we like flush streets. That's why we like wide sidewalks. Try and avoid hardwiring your street. Like, here's where you dine, here's where you walk, here's where you plant trees, here's where you park, here's where you turn right, here's where you go through, here's where you turn left. Like, try and make it super flexible, and then your entrepreneurs and business folks and residents will come up with all kinds of creative ways to use that space for the benefit of all sorts of user groups. And then if you have a university or something like that, it's just great. You've got a built-in market of new people every year coming in. With the university, though, there's a small dimension. Any place like a military base or a university or a tourist place where you get new people coming all the time, you just want to make sure your downtown is legible so that it's not cryptic, and so people can get a kind of cognitive map of what's out there and know what's available so they can use it too. So in a nutshell, that's what I would suggest.
That's fantastic, and I think that clearly, for example, from my perspective, our Rosemary parking deck was a little too cryptic. People didn't know that it was there. And it was designed to blend in, but it did its function just a little too well. So, all right. So for Derek, let's move it to a construction question. Seeing a design of what's possible can be really exciting for some, and as you discussed, for others, and you discussed this as well, Allison, you know, for others, it's valid concerns about construction process and how disruptive it can be. It's important that the businesses that make downtown so successful survive the process. You know, besides what you already discussed, are there ways that Athens supported business both before and during construction to ensure that they were still there and healthy? And then Allison, I suspect you've got some insight on this as well.
Yes, Athens has a downtown development authority, and they work, you know, kind of like a chamber of commerce type thing for those particular businesses. And so, just from a collaborative effort, it was, again, having one of those stakeholders there that was helpful, you know, getting the word out, making sure that we understood from a college standpoint, making sure we understood what the special days are. One of the things that we did, that came from the businesses is, we make our money, retail sales growth. We make our money between Thanksgiving and New Year's. So we don't need we don't want anything. So we put it in the contract that you cannot do any work except maintenance work in there. If something happened and they need to come in and fix something, a ramp or whatever, we had to make sure that the contractor understood those, and we understood all those dates in there. It wasn't just football Saturday. That's religious, but was graduations. All those other type of events that the Chamber of Commerce's, the downtown business of people, and again, understanding if that business has an annual sidewalk sale. Just trying to document those types of events and that communication so we can plan around it and schedule around it. There may be a business or two that goes out of business, but the people like on the DDA, the downtown, the Chamber of Commerce, when I say they can assure, that's maybe not the right word, but they can lend credence to if a business goes out during that time, how we're more than likely you weren't truly the cause of it. It could be, but they were able to assure the elected officials that they've been having some trouble for a while. They've been looking for a tenant to take over that building. So it's some of that backstory information that just gives you a little bit more understanding of what's going on.
On both an informal and formal basis, right? Because Lord knows there are people that like to write stories about our street, and it's fascinating to me because we had an article written 2 months ago maybe, and they talked about how businesses come and go, and they didn't talk to one of the four. They had 4 different businesses that have been there basically 30 years. None of those were discussed for comment, right? So it's fascinating. We got to preemptively take that. Allison, what are your thoughts? How did Hendersonville, and how are you right now with 7th Avenue? How are you making this work?
Sure, I think part of it is building that buy-in ahead of time. Far beyond you even start discussing about the design or the project, having really engaged staff members with the businesses. We have 3 staff members that are funded out of our 2 municipal service districts, and they have been creatively installing different events and different things well before we ever got to the streetscape portion. Another bit of that has been leveraging the tools we have at the city in terms of our marketing and local radio spots and a lot of the free media we have, and also some of the paid media we use with our downtown program, dedicating some of that. Not singling out businesses, not necessarily treating one any different than the other, but at least that district, and using those funds to set up interviews. Working with our local media to do regular updates on the streetscape project, and always trying to direct them towards some of those businesses. That way they hear from the city about the progress, but then they're also hearing about Claywood Bourbon Bar and our local coffee shop and what kind of marketing ideas they have, and using those free media channels to your advantage has been really helpful.
So I was struck, my kids go to school at Phillips Middle School, and so Estes has been under construction, I don't know, 25 years now? No, 3 years. And so I'm curious, when you were showing the CPM diagram, the critical path diagram, and I don't know if we do this, maybe someone from town of Chapel Hill, but I'm curious in terms of the transparency and communication. I thought to myself, well, geez, this is something, we just have that CPM up. Like if you got a question about where you are in the project, you could just go somewhere and see how the CPM is looking. Is that something y'all have done? Does that sound like a good practice? Because as alluded to, we have a project that is taking a little bit longer, and there's just a lot of misinformation about what's going on, and I think that the town tries to communicate, but people got to be listening, and so I almost kind of feel like people are ready to listen when they're ready to listen, and they want to reach out and grab that info. So have you tried anything like that, or do you do that?
We do that, but I'd be careful on the critical path method that he mentioned, not getting so specific with the construction contract that you have businesses or residents saying, oh, on December 3rd, you said you were gonna do that. But however, those broad brushstrokes of that path, and that way you can track it, and if you know something's running behind, you can just update that. So like one software is called Swim Lanes. There's other type of software there that gives you that broad brush, are you working on this block, are you working on that block? And the general big picture, storm drain or side curb walk or streetscape sections, just big picture items that give them an understanding of what's happening and when the expectation is. Yeah, and you put that on the website, and again, give that sheet to whoever you're gonna have walking around, and just let them know when you update it when you need it updated.
And Allison, has that been successful in Hendersonville as well, or do you do something like that? Or?
Absolutely, and I would reiterate not getting so granular because
Right.
there are so many delays. We've been dealing with some utility relocation that is out of our control and just updating individual businesses on the nitty-gritty of what they need to know, but then the wider brush strokes. One thing I've found helpful too is I am not an engineer, and I do have a couple people in the engineering department that are great to help us distill what the businesses really need to know and not get completely bogged down in a lot of the extraneous details. But the basics of what is the front of my store going to look like? How is the access going to be for my customers? Do I need to upstaff, downstaff? Just kind of translating the engineering technical jargon to what the businesses really need to know and not overpromising, like setting up those expectations because there are just so many delays. So you don't want to get ahead of yourself and promise something when you're going to have to backpedal later on.
I just want to point out, by the way, as a combat engineer, Ian, you'll be receptive to this. I mean, the fact that we say things like critical path method, that's impressive for combat engineers, right? We just look things up, that's all we do. All right, so John, usually the first question people ask about change in street design is, what is this going to do to traffic, right? So new designs are evaluated based on vehicular level of service and maybe some safety metrics. But this investment in public space and the health of downtown, or this is an investment, what metrics do you think are the best to evaluate the success of a project? I mean, is there something we should focus on?
You got that? Well, I can tell you generally what I think about that. First of all, the general public has a lot of misconceptions about how to really manage congestion and how to really deal with traffic. And a lot of, this can get really nerdy really fast, but when you're talking about street design or road design, it's really the left turn conflict that drives so many of the issues. And so you end up with, at intersections, you add more and more lanes to be able to fill the intersection up as much as you can so that when the light turns green, you're flushing out as many cars as you can. And then you end up with this huge slug of cars going down the road, and your experience within that platoon of cars is that I'm surrounded by cars, this is a congested street. But if you took a bird's eye view of this, you'd see this big group of cars, of angry people driving down side by side. And so the public wants more lanes, but more lanes is usually not the answer. The real answer is parallel pathways to have a more pervious system so that I don't have to take that route, I can take an alternate route. To do more efficient intersection designs like roundabouts. I mentioned Carmel, Indiana, they have like 150 of these things. You can drive around Carmel, Indiana for like all day long and never stop. And so that's a lot of it. The other thing I would say is just in general, I don't know if you're familiar with transect language, but the idea of the transect is that at transect 1, it's a continuum of intensity that comes from biology, where transect 1 is wilderness and transect 6 is downtown Manhattan. And there's just like this continuum of intensity. And we think a lot about what's appropriate in terms of building style in different parts of that continuum. But we also talk about what's appropriate in street design. And so if you're in the middle of nowhere, you can put a whole lot of cars at high speed on 1 or 2 lanes. But if you get into more congested areas, it becomes more complex. We also need to be thinking more about non-vehicular systems and how they interact. And I think the same is true, where when you get away from downtown, you should have, if possible, dedicated bike lanes that are completely off the grid, that don't interact with cars at all, and greenways and things like that whenever you can. But when you get more into town, you need to create spaces that are more flexible, that are more accessible to people of all ages, all abilities, and all types of vehicles. And so it just gets more and more nuanced and complex when you get into a downtown environment, even to include Wooners and things like that, where my wife's German, so we spend quite a bit of time in these little German towns. But streetscapes in small German towns where it's pedestrians, cars, bikes, there's no lanes, everybody's just making it work, and it works just fine. So it just depends on the context to be able to evaluate the ideal design. And if I could, real quickly, back to public engagement on construction projects, one thing that we found that's pretty effective is we require our design firms to provide KMZ files that we overlay on Google Earth on our GIS to show the actual design of the project. And so you can zoom down and see exactly what we're doing. We keep that up to date. We get feedback from those files. And then we Gantt these things in four areas: the design of the project, land acquisition, utility relocation, and the construction of the project. Just roughly speaking, I think most projects are going to fall into those. And at least for us, we have almost zero control over utility relocations, and we literally found a railroad underneath the road that we were building. And so that nobody knew it was there. There's a railroad track running down this road. So
You've never heard of the Underground Railroad?
Yeah. So any number of things can happen during construction, and providing rapid feedback on that, I think, is important.
I'd like to touch on it.
Please.
So in North America, our cities focus a lot on traffic volumes and levels of service for motorists. And when there's some congestion, they widen and whatnot. The cities that do that the most are probably the worst cities in North America. The cities that do that the least are probably the best. The cities that focus on vehicle miles traveled reduction are the better cities. They'll be more prosperous, they'll be prettier, there'll be most social and economic exchange. So what you want to be doing is changing modes, like you were mentioning. You want to change trip lengths through land uses, through network, and so forth. And by doing that, you can reduce your VMT and stop spending so much money on widenings and so forth. It's the most expensive way of moving around ever invented in the history of the world. But if you start doing VMT reduction, which is the metric that the best cities ought to be pursuing, you can actually move around at less cost and have money left over for nice things, which every city wants to do. Thanks.
Absolutely.
Okay, and we, John, before we went back to metrics, the segue about putting the KML files over the actual design. I mean, we know when a project gets started, the initial impulse is, hey, whoa, stop the tide. You get a lot of people. You discussed how even in the 50s, or I'm sorry, I guess the 70s, when they were making the, right, there was so much pushback. I'm curious, does that change throughout the scope of a project? Does the communication with the KML help people understand what's happening? And I'm assuming the people in Hendersonville now see their street as a wonderful, charming. Okay.
Yeah, the dynamic can be adjusted through a variety of factors, but you can have a group of businesses that are all engaged and in your downtown advisory boards and are clamoring for this project, and you can have a new business owner come into town, and it just changes the balance, and maybe they don't have that historical data and buy-in, so there is some catching up that has to be done with those kind of factors that come into place. But yeah, I love the KML idea to update it throughout the project. I might have to take that back and say, hey, engineers, let's start putting this on our project pages too.
Fantastic. We had a question from the audience, and I know that this is wrapped up in state law, a lot of it, so perhaps Allison can help navigate North Carolina specific. But Derek, you talked about I'm sorry, it's the SPLOST. What is it? The SPLOST, right?
Yeah.
But the question is, hey, how do we finance all of these things? And are there best practices that we can do? And perhaps you can lead us what you're doing, and then Allison maybe talk about analogous North Carolina situation.
Yeah. The Georgia legislature realized that communities need to take as much. The state only had so much money to give, so the communities had to start picking that up. So one of the ways they did that several years ago, it's been in existence for a while now, is to allow the voters in that county to vote themselves in a sales tax. And so it's the 1 penny on every dollar, and they can do it, actually we can do 3 different ones in Georgia. One's for education, Board of Education, that's a separate government, but the special purpose local option sales tax allows you to do capital projects. It's all capital project driven. It's not supposed to be used for operating dollars. You can't backfill the general fund. It's for capital projects. And depending on who you ask, the special part of it could be something, it needs to be special. It needs to be something new, a new ballpark or a new, tennis center or whatnot. But state law allows you to do capital projects. So we do several things. We build jails, parks, courthouses. We bought capital improvement, using capital dollars. We bought buses, fire trucks, all that kind of stuff.
And let me ask a question here. Are we talking about the 1 cent per dollar, or 1 cent per dollar is the cumulative amount that you can do, or or can you pass that for each project? I mean, how does that work?
It's in Georgia, it's either a time or a dollar amount. So depending on the nuance of state law, typically most counties do it for a defined time, 5 or 6 years. And so you have budget analysts that estimate how much the sales tax revenue would do, and that's basically what it would take. And then the local politicians can take up what those projects will be spent, what the dollars will be spent on.
Right, okay, so there's a cap to it, because, for example, and I don't know if everyone knows this, but we have in North Carolina the option to raise our sales tax, which here in Orange County, we have maxed it out. So I only know this because I pay my taxes every month for the top of the hill. But I'm curious, Allison, given those constraints, where we don't have this special project, the SPLOTs, what can we do, or how are you all making it happen?
On one of those same avenues, I think our council is very interested in a 1/4 cent local option sales tax, but so far that hasn't come to fruition, but it's often discussed at a lot of their planning retreats.
Well, so is this something you're lobbying the state for authorization to get, or is this something that
Yes, we don't currently have it, but it would need the blessing of the General Assembly. So that's talked about, but not a practical funding source for us right now. But one of the great things is we do have 2 MSDs, municipal service districts, and each of those districts, our Main Street and our 7th Avenue, is I believe a 19 cent per $100 valuation. And so some of those funds can be used for this kind of streetscape project. Because we were, in addition to the pedestrian amenities, there's also a ton of utility improvements. So we were able to get a water sewer grant as well as a stormwater grant. I think a 319 stormwater grant fund were some of the alternative areas, and then our general fund did pick up some of it as well. So it's a bit of a patchwork of funding sources for this, since we don't have some of those outside options other states may be able to do.
We have an MSD district in downtown. I don't know if you all know this, but that's, like you say, it's a rider on the actual property tax bill. We also max out the transportation. And this is one of the things that I've thought, is that transportation sales tax was originally, at least my understanding, geared towards bringing in light rail. And since we got this federal money for the, help me out, the BRT, is that what, bus rapid transit, is that what we're calling it? I'm curious if those monies could be diverted to help fix our street, which would be transportation.
We're using PAL bill dollars too for the resurfacing portion of it.
All right, so we are running out of time, and we have saved the very specific question, very easy question to answer. So we want to hear from all of you. What is the one thing that is an absolute must for a successful street project?
Wide sidewalks, flexibility.
Wide sidewalks, I like it.
Trees, and knowing exactly, this too.
It's the problem with municipal projects.
Yeah, that's how it goes. It always gets out of hand. Trees are incredibly important, but knowing what it is that you're trying to accomplish.
Okay.
Being very clear about that.
I'm going to go with community and elected official unified vision.
Tell your story from start to finish, so when people come behind you, whether it's tomorrow or next time, they understand what you try to do.
remarkably consistent between Allison and Derek and between Ian and John there, right? Wide streets, big trees, all that good stuff. So, I'm not sure who I'm supposed to hand this off to. Kevin Bacon. He knows everybody, apparently. 6 degrees.
Thank you. I do want to thank all of our panelists this evening. I know all of you came from a great distance, some farther than others, but still that's a big commitment on your time nonetheless, and we really appreciate you all being out here to share your stories with us and ask the questions that we all know from the time that we've been working here that's been on everybody's mind, and I know there's more on the clipboards we'll get to, but big thank you to you all. Thank you, and can we give them one more round of applause? Just to kind of give everybody an update onto what to expect for this project and this week and where we're at in the process. So once again, my name is Kevin Bacon. I'm with Tool Design. I am the project manager, but Sarah Johnson, who's been running around, is our deputy project manager, and she's why all this really great stuff is happening this week. This project, we were here for the mobility study. Over the last couple of years, that was really the first step to get this going, of really looking at downtown streets to say, how else can they serve all users, really taking that mobility lens to the streets. This is to take it the next step further, and in the vein of a lot of the conversations that we've had tonight is, in addition to that mobility conversation, how do we accommodate a lot of other uses in that idea of cities and our streets being those places for social and economic exchange, and place is that key word here. Like, really great streets and really great cities, their streets do a lot of work, and you've seen a lot of that here tonight. And that's what this is all about. We're not doing construction documents, we're not tearing up streets tomorrow or in the next 6 months, but it's to take that mobility study the next step farther and say, what could that design look like? What do we want that to look like for the streets of downtown? So that we'll kind of be looking at, how wide are sidewalks, how often are the trees, are there, where are the bike lanes, and is that on every street? Like, really bring some finality to that, and even look at some of the ideas for materials, knowing that there is a palette out there now in terms of brick pavers and sidewalks, and is that what we want to continue to do with? Are there new ideas? So this is starting that process this week. This was a great conversation to kind of get our heads into that space. But we've got any number of walking tours that we'll be doing with community members tomorrow. There's a schedule up on the board at the front. There's also a web link and a QR code. If you can't take that with you, you can pull that up. Registrations are helpful, but you can just show up at any one of the times, and we'll walk around and talk with you about those issues. But this is to really start understanding what everybody wants to see, us understanding kind of the conditions of the streets right now. We'll take this information to start some of that design work over the summer and come back again in the fall with another week-long event, more engagement activities to start looking at some of those big ideas that we take forward. So we really want this, we've designed this to be a process that the design is driven by what everybody wants to see here, and we really hope that you all will be a part of that this week and going forward. So it's really encouraging to see everybody that's here tonight, and we hope the numbers will continue to grow. So if you've got friends, family members, anybody that you see, bring them along for the ride, because the more the merrier. So thank you all very much. Katie, did you want to say anything to close us out? Or?
No, just that our panel members will be here a little bit longer if you wanted to come up and ask any individual questions, and then also all of our contact information is on that project page, and we'd be happy to hear from you directly about your thoughts and pass those along to our designers.
Thank you all very much.